It was a dog with a collar that I couldn't stand to look at anymore. If he kept talking nonsense a little longer, he might jump on him and strangle Byron. But, fortunately or not, Byron staggered to the bed and fell. Despite being so drunk, he felt capable of finding a bed on his own. She hid there for a while to see if Byron was sleeping, but he didn't even move. It almost made him wonder if he was dead and not asleep. Now he only had to sneak into the room, but unfortunately, the distance between the tree and the window was a bit far. It was a distance where she felt she could cling to the window frame if she ran as fast as she could, but there was a good chance she would be left too exposed. The noise would be loud too. There must be another way. He looked around. At this moment, the moon, which had been hidden by clouds, reappeared and a relief sculpture was seen on the outer wall of the building illuminated by the light. She didn't know what it symbolized, but if she could step on that sculpture, she would be able to sneak into the room much more safely. Let me try. Anyway, Byron was sleeping like he was dead and there was no security guard nearby. Determined to try, Isla pushed her feet against the wall with all her strength, stepping on the thick branches. First of all, step 1 was a success. Isla, who was hanging securely on the wall, carefully stuck her foot out toward the window frame. Made. 2 small noises were heard, but Byron, who was drunk and asleep, did not wake up from that loud noise. He hid behind the wall and looked out the window, but the guards in the distance didn't seem to notice him. Isla was the first to reach her desk after successfully infiltrating the room. It was the place where the letters he so longed to read were found. He took a look to see if Byron was still sleeping well and looked at the luxurious paper with the red wax seal attached. Luckily, Byron had already read it and there were tears in it. She has thought deeply about your suggestion. She also has the same desire to hunt young lions that are loose. However, he thinks he knows very well that it is not easy to hunt a lion while it is guarded by a huge white wolf. Furthermore, he had already tried to hunt an old lion before, but without success. Then you will assume that he didn't listen to your suggestion. What does this mean? Hunt a lion? Byron was a man far removed from hunting. He hated physical exertion and always spent time in closed spaces. The proof was that his skin had turned white from not being exposed to sunlight. But Byron was a hunter. It didn't take much thinking to immediately realize that this didn't mean hunting. The other letters had similar content to the first one he read. It was full of content about hunting lions or wolves. The handwriting was different and the stamp patterns were different, so it looked like all the letters had been sent by different people. It would be nice if there were other clues. After checking to see if Byron was sleeping well, he put the cards back in their proper place. Then he found a response written by Byron on his desk. I couldn't tell if she hadn't stamped it yet or if she didn't like the answer and rewrote it on a different piece of paper, but it was a cool opportunity for her. Isla swallowed nervously and looked at Byron's response. I know enough to know what worries you. That cheeky wolf is protecting the lion, so he must be scared. But don't worry, I have a very good hunting dog. My faithful dog will soon destroy the white wolf. So let's join forces and hunt the lion. P.S. I tell you this because I think you have forgotten, I have proof that the Lord was with me many years ago. Isla's expression as she left Byron's letter was not very happy. It was because she was lost in thought. Byron's hunting dog. You mean me? Byron did breed dogs, but the dogs he bred were not exactly hunting dogs, as they were small, adorable-looking puppies. Of course it's me. He was also compared to Byron's dog. If the dog was referring to her, the great white wolf written on the letter was probably referring to Isla's father, Roderick Ellen Weishafen. She felt like she was sweating. Wasn't killing the head of the Weishafen Duchy, the so-called guardian of this empire, just a step towards murdering someone else? It was unclear exactly who the young lion was referring to, but it meant that he was at least a duke or a higher rank. What is interesting in this world? Isla's face was white, staring at the back of Byron, who had been sleeping face down on the bed for a long time. Who is Dajo Byron to come up with such a terrifying conspiracy? Isla, who was staring at Byron with a shiver down her spine, realized that too much time had passed and quickly left the room. It was time to quickly return to the attic. Isla, who returned to the attic, thought about the contents of the mysterious letter she had read before falling asleep. Who exactly does the expression young lion refer to? No, it could have meant more than just a person. She thought that the huge white wolf guarding the lion was Roderick, but perhaps she was not referring to him but to the Duke of Weishafen himself. In that case, the lion could also be a metaphor for a certain family or organization. If I had known it would be like this, I would have listened better in class. Isla ruffled her fine silver hair. 2 years as a princess after completing her basic etiquette training, Roderick attempted to slowly educate her as his successor. He began to teach information about the history of the empire and the Duchy of Pellis, the current state of the empire, and other important noble families. But unfortunately, at that moment, Isla was so preoccupied with Byron's plan that it was not far from happening and she could not pay attention to other matters. She did not ignore the conference, thinking that she had no chance of becoming the heir to the dukedom. Isla, who had been wandering in her memories for a long time with her head spinning, was not even able to decipher the identity of the young lion and had to fall asleep. My lord. Byron had barely fallen asleep after drinking late into the night and frowned when an unpleasant voice woke him up. Everyone here probably knows how much he hates it when someone wakes him up before he can wake up on his own. My lord, you should wake up and see him. It was the voice of Cloud, Byron's loyal shadow. Cloud wasn't the kind of person who would wake up for the world while he was sleeping soundly. Because he was well aware of that fact, he sat on the bed, even though he didn't feel like it. The sun hadn't risen yet, so the sky was dark. Isn't this the time for her to train? What are you doing here if you're not directing? He said this without being able to hide his annoyance because his dream was interrupted. For most people, it was a lively time as the day had just begun, but for Byron, it was still the middle of the night. I received urgent news, that's why I woke up, my lord, even though I knew it was rude. I'm sorry. However, despite the owner's anger, Cloud only spoke about his business in an urgent voice. It was urgent news. How was it possible that the news was so urgent that Cloud, who never went against his wishes, would do something like that? What the hell is happening? Just pretend it's no big deal. Byron thought about this and took a sip of the water on the nightstand. It was because his throat was burning from having drunk too much the night before. There is news that Lady Hyling is ill. Hyling, which was also Isla's middle name, was Ophelia's original last name. After becoming Duchess of Weishafen, that name remained only as a middle name. However, in front of Byron, who was still full of regrets for Ophelia, the title Duchess was a taboo word, and since it was impossible to call a high-status person by that name carelessly, Byron's people called Ophelia that way. Byron, who was quickly drinking water, was so shocked by the shocking news that he coughed repeatedly. Well, what do you mean? Tell me in detail. Byron was always calm, but he couldn't be when it came to things related to Ophelia. Ophelia was that kind of person. She was the only person who always worried Byron and made him impatient. It is news that came quickly from a source within the Duke's company. I don't know the details, but it seems that he is in serious condition. He suddenly collapsed and could not regain consciousness. Byron's face became whiter and whiter as he listened to Cloud's explanation.